Let's now start developing our model components. As a quick review, so when we talk about object orientation in the previous video, we talk about once we observe the real-world entities, in this case, let's say persons. It can be Jim, can be Jonathan, can be Jackie. So all the relevant entities are classified into a single template or class. And what we're going to do right now is to see how we can do the classification programmatically in Java specifically. So we got person class, and then we're going to declare attributes. For our particular BMI calculator app, we have 3 attributes to characterize what a person is: name, weight, and height. And then we'll see that at the runtime, as we'll see, we'll create some tester as well for test-driven development, which we really try to introduce to you in the previous video. As soon as your program code for the model becomes executable, you should really start testing right away. That's something I will demonstrate to you, and you really want to adopt this process to any further developments of your apps. Okay, so and then we're gonna see that at the runtime, we're gonna have different instances or objects created for your templates or classes. Okay, let's go to Android Studio. Okay, let's now go under ECS 1022.bmi under Java. And then we'll try to create a model class. Okay, so now let's right click on ECS 1022.bmi package, right click, and then say new, and then we create another class file. Okay, so now what should be a good name for our model? So in general, you might have more than one classes for your model components in general. However, to begin with, we just start with something simple. So choosing a good name is really important. Let's think about what's really the entities we are dealing with for this particular BMI calculator. For each BMI calculation, we are trying to compute the BMI for a person. It can be Jackie, it can be Jim, it can be Jonathan. So the model we are really trying to deal with are persons. How do we characterize a person? We use a person class. Okay, so for the name here, again, the naming convention for Java classes will be for compound words, there'll be no spaces in between, and then they should be capitalized. Okay, so person. Okay, a very bad name would be BMI model. So this is a bad name for your class name. Okay, it's bad because here, of course, for the BMI, we're dealing with BMI model, but this is not informative at all. We want to really talk about what's really the entities we are dealing with. In this case, it should be person. So a much more appropriate name would be person. Okay, and then we say okay. So now we have got a person class over here, and then we're going to declare attributes, and then we set up some tester, and then we'll be ready to do some more testing and developments. So now, first of all, let's try to document this. Okay, over here, it's by default the documentation generated for you, but we can just override it. We can say the person class is a template for person entities. Okay, and then we are now to declare attributes. So now let's talk about how should you structure your model classes or your person class. For each one of them, let's follow this template over here, just for your for the easiness of for you to learn. So section 1. We're gonna think about what kind of data we're gonna use to store to characterize a person. For example, how do we characterize Jim? In this case, we'll store his name, weight, and height. Okay, so attributes are data that we store to represent the state. So this state here, this word state is really the keyword. State simply means the combination of the attribute value. For example, in the case of Jim, let's go back to the previous example over here. In the case of, let's say, Jim. Actually, let me just use a better. Okay, actually, you know what? It's here. Okay, let's now try to see this diagram over here. Okay, let me reuse it. Let's say for the person Jim over here. Okay, what's his states? The state will be the combination of the attribute value, which will be the string Jim and then the value 80 for his weights, and also 1.80 for his heights. And what would be the states for the entity Jonathan? In this case, it will be the string Jonathan for his name. It will be 80 for his maybe weights, and the height for 1.80. But they just happen to be the same, but they don't have to be the same in general. Okay, that's what a state means. The state simply means combination of attribute values. The state, i.e., combination of attribute values to represent the states of each entity. Okay, that's what we use. Now, what should be now how do we characterize the attributes? How you characterize is really up to what you need for your particular application. For the case of the BMI calculator, remember in the GUI design, let's have a look very quickly. Go under resources and go under layout and then activity XML file. Remember the input we enter for a person will be name, weights, and heights. And now the name will be any string, basically just a sequence of characters. Okay, and then the weights, we presume that should be a number, which might be a real number that represents the measure in kilograms, and the height should be the measure like a real number in meters. Okay, so these are the three pieces of information that we need at least. But of course, you gotta use your judgment for later apps to see what attributes you need. It's really something you gotta practice over time. Okay, let's go back to person class over here. So now we need three attributes. So now we're going to do the following. It's called declarations of attributes. Each declaration of an attribute consists of two parts. Okay, maybe I can make this a block comments. Okay, each declaration of an attribute consists of two parts. One is the type of the attributes, and the second, the name of the attributes. Okay, what do I mean by the type? Type simply means the set of or the collection of. Okay, just in case you're not too sure what a set is, the collection of allowed values. Okay, let me give you one example. So now let's say we talk about the name of the person. Okay, if I say, let's consider two possibilities. I can either say string, which is a type in Java that's already supported, but notice that it's capitalized. Okay, it's capitalized. It should be uppercase S. We'll give you a string. If I can say either string, name, that's possibility number one. Possibility number two, I can say integer, name. Okay, so now we're going to consider which type is more appropriate for the name. Think about what string is. String is a type that basically represents the collection of possible sequence of characters. For example, what can be the name? One example can be, you can have, for example, Jackie. So that's a string with with 6 characters. Or it can be Jim, or it can be Jonathan. So basically, any sequence of characters is a allowable string value. Okay. On the other hand, what about int? Int stands for integer, which is the integer that you learn from mathematics. It can be 1, can be 2, can be 3, can be 4. So now, by declaring name as of type string, what does that mean? That means at the runtime when we execute the program, you can only change, you think of each variable as a placeholder. Okay, so every time when you change the contents of this particular name, let's say if I change my name from Jackie to Bernie, for example, right? So that means I changing the contents of my the variable. Okay, over here the attributes. So now in this case, so now that means every value I hold must be a string. Okay, it can be Jackie, Jim, or Jonathan. On the other hand, the name over here, that means the placeholder name can only store integers. Do you think 1 can be a valid name? Not really, right? It doesn't make realistic sense. Okay, that's why we should really keep this declaration over here. So that's more appropriate. Let me also document over here to show you, to remind you that it is not appropriate to declare name as integer. Okay, it is not appropriate to declare integer name, because we know that the name, the integer values 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. are not appropriate for a name. Okay, so now let's declare more attributes to characterize the person. We also have weights and heights. So now we are facing the same situation here. What should be the good type for declaring the weight and heights? Okay. Oh, by the way, so over here, the type. Let me just make more notes over here for you. What are the common data types in Java? We'll learn about data types more in the lecture. So integer. So over here, common data types in Java. Okay. So now we can either say integer for integers. Okay, it will be one. You'll be starting from negative. For example, it's like a negative number -3 and 2, 0, 23, 34, etc. And also double for real numbers. So would be for example, it can have -3.2. and also 0.9, and also 45.56. Okay, you get an idea. And also we have string for sequences of characters. Let's talk about character first, because otherwise you wouldn't know what a character is. Character is just like a single stroke on your keyboard, basically. Character for just a single key. For example, it can be, usually we use single quote for the character. It can be character A, it can be a character with only a single space, or it can be C, and etc. It can be the @ sign. Okay, and also for string, it be a sequence of characters. For example, you have the special case will be empty string with no characters inside, just empty, or can be a string with a single character, and it can be a string with maybe 6 characters. Okay, so these are the 4 common data types. You got int for integers, double for real numbers, char, not character, char for single keys, and also string for sequences of characters. And notice that string is capitalized. Okay, so now let's go on. So now what should be the type for the weights and heights? So you gotta decide whether we should say int weights, or double weights, char weights, or string weights. Okay, hopefully you can at least to tell that these two should not be appropriate for weights and heights, because they should be numbers, right? And now what about the numbers? Well, think about what the weight can be. Can we allow 70.85 kilograms? If we do allow, then we should use double rather than integer. If you say we always only accept integers for the weights, then we can only use int. Okay, I think to make realistic sense, it should be double. Okay, so now we can say double weight and double heights. So now we got 3 attributes over here. So now again, so you can see the string, double, and double here. These are the types of the attributes. And name, weights, and heights. So these are the attributes. Okay, let me just say attribute. They also got another name. It's called class variables. So variables in the sense that their values can vary, which means at the runtime, you may change the values for a person's, for example, weights or heights. Well, if they grow heavier or if they grow taller, in which case they certainly can change their values. That's why it's also called class variable. I will prefer attributes actually, because they are really the attributes to characterize what an entity person is. Okay, so we got these 3 attributes. So now what we should do next is to actually create a tester, because our code is almost executable. Almost. We just need to make sure we have a mechanism to create instances of person, which we'll do in the next video. But before we go there, let's now recap what we have learned, and then we'll create a tester. Basically, we create a class called person. Person is simply a template, as we learned from the object orientation video. Okay, it's a class called person, which means at the runtime we can instantiate as many person instances or objects as we like. Each person object or instance has 3 attributes. So this is what's really common about all the person instances. So we got name. The name of the attribute will be name, weights, and heights. But to declare, so each line is called a declaration over here. So we declare an attribute which is called name. And at the runtime, the name attribute can store string values only. Which means, for example, if I say, since I declare name to be of type string, I cannot change its value from Jackie into 5. Right? I cannot do that because 5 is actually a number. Or I cannot change from Jackie into 5.2. That's also not allowed. On the other hand, for the weights, let's say currently if that's 70, I cannot change it to Jackie because it can store double number only, not really any string. Okay, so you want to make sure it's compatible. Okay, let me just write more, just one more comment. Okay, so now we can say once we have declared the types of attributes is considered as type errors. So that's really important for you to understand. If we try to store values, if we try to, let's say, change the attributes considered as a, let's make it easier to read, a type error, if we try to change the attributes, if we try to change an attribute's value into a value into one that is not compatible with its declared type. For example, changing a person's name to, for example, 3.4 is not type correct. Okay, more example here. Changing a person's weight to, in this case, let's say 70. You can see the 70 here is not really a number, it's actually a string, right? Because that's quoted. It's not type correct. Okay, hopefully you get an idea. Okay, so now, we got 3 declaration of 3 attributes, and now let's create a tester for our person. Under app, under Java, under ECS 1022. So we used to have a tester over here. So this tester is only for the purpose of demonstrating some simple examples. So now we want to create a tester that's dedicated to testing the person class. Okay, so why don't we just create a new class? So right click on this package here, and then select new and Java class. Okay, we can call that, you can either call it test person, that's acceptable name, or you can say person tester. Okay, either way, I'll just choose person tester. Okay. Okay, so this is a tester program for testing the correctness of the person class. And we'll gradually show you how you can do it. But remember, for each tester, you have to have that line of the main method. Okay, let's just type it out. Public static void main string square brackets, and then we have arts over here. And then over here, you can manipulate your person objects, which we'll show you in the next video.